So it looks like Yoshi-P, the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV and producer of Final Fantasy XVI, is feeling very positive about the possibility that both games will eventually be coming to Switch 2. Of course, Final Fantasy VII Remake is also coming to Switch 2, which is not a surprise given that Square Enix is going through a major company restructuring, trying to get these games to as many platforms as possible, to as many eyes as possible, right? Because as many of us know, their current strategy is not working too well for them. And this multi-platform strategy is only the beginning of this 3-year reboot plan that Square Enix has in effect. And it looks like Yoshi-P is very optimistic that, yeah, 14 and 16 are eventually going to make it to Switch 2. So before we get into it, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to keep up to date with anything JRPG or gaming related in the future. And with that, let's get right into it. Now, this comes from VGC over at Gamescom, and it discusses Yoshi-P going over the very high likelihood that both games will be coming to Switch 2, as well as the benefits of that. It reads here, quote, "For me, it's just my aim to provide Final Fantasy XIV and 16 to as many players as possible. And I hope that as many players as possible will be able to enjoy those two games," he said. "We're putting in our best efforts to ensure that this happens, so it's fine to convey to your readership that I consider the possibilities very positively. And we're putting in our best efforts, so I hope players will look forward to the possibilities in the future. But I just ask for a little bit more time." And I think we all knew in the back of our minds that this was something that was happening, like it was always a possibility. And not too long ago, Yoshi-P even hinted at the fact that these ports were in discussion. But I mean, it sounds like they're pretty far along in making sure that this does happen, and it makes sense, right? The newest mainline game in the franchise, Final Fantasy XVI, I mean, this has to be brought to as many people as possible. And if it wasn't something that was done at launch, even though it should have, this is nothing but a good thing. And hopefully every mainline game going forward is on every platform day one. Not even just Final Fantasy, but every single Square Enix game going forward. I mean, it's 2025, unless you're a first-party studio, I think it's unacceptable to have your game locked behind one console when you can give that game a chance to earn so much more money, garner more eyes if it was just multi-platform. And I think it was unacceptable that Square Enix locked away their biggest heavy hitters on one console at launch, pretty much cutting any chance these games had Rebirth and 16 of any legs for the future. Like, yeah, you got Sony money to create the game you wanted, but now you're having trouble covering the cost. So I really do think that Square Enix is on the right track here and making almost all of their games multi-platform. Yoshi-P continues discussing the benefits of Final Fantasy XIV in particular coming to Switch 2. He says, quote, "When it comes to existing Final Fantasy XIV players, if hypothetically a Switch 2 version was released, they would have the chance, for example, going through the main story, they could play that on PC and do raiding on PC. But when it comes to other types of content, they could sit back, relax on the sofa with the Switch 2 in hand, and they can do their gatherer and crafter content, and I'm super excited about that sort of possibility for our players. When it comes to players who haven't played Final Fantasy XIV before, the younger generation of players, if they started playing Final Fantasy XIV on Switch 2, of course, being an MMO, it might be a new genre for them. And I would be super excited to get these new players into this genre and enjoy the game as well. So to this end, we've been discussing with Nintendo, and the discussions have been positive. So I do hope that players will look forward to hopefully good news in the future. And Yoshi-P brings up a really good point in the fact that, like, yeah, Switch 2 is going to be bringing in a ton of players. I mean, the Switch 2 fan base in general is massive, one of the biggest consoles in history. To have both of these games, both Final Fantasy XIV and 16 releasing on Switch in particular, that is just big news for this franchise, more good news for this franchise, because now not only do you have Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth, but now you have Square Enix's biggest MMO, Final Fantasy XIV, and the newest mainline game in the series, Final Fantasy XVI. Not only that, but you also have Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, releasing very, very soon. To finally see this company getting back on some sort of track, getting their heavy hitters out there to as many platforms as possible, and by extension, getting them out there on day one. When you take into account how massive the player base is on Switch, all this really means is good news. All it really means for the franchise is that this FF fan base is going to expand beyond anything we've ever seen. As long as the game is good and it releases on all platforms day one, I don't think there is any doubt about it. Now, I think the only problem I would see with these ports, really mainly Final Fantasy 16, is the fact that it uses a proprietary engine, and therefore it may be a little more difficult to port over to the Switch 2. Unlike, the Unreal Engine, which the remakes use, a very industry standard engine. It is just so much more user-friendly to use, easier for developers to get into and just do their thing. Which isn't to say that proprietary engines are hard to use or anything like that. It depends on the engine, but it can definitely take more time working with an in-house engine than it does with Unreal, which any developer can easily use, right? Not to mention that the latest Final Fantasy games don't really have the best performance. Whether you're playing Rebirth or 16, I think on mostly all of their ports there's some problems, and they're not really consistent, but at the very least, as long as I can play them like I can literally anywhere else, that is really all I care about. Anyways, let me know what you all think about this down below. Are you looking forward to inevitably seeing both Final Fantasy 14 and 16 coming to Switch 2? Do you think it'll be beneficial to these games, especially when it comes to sales, or do you think it's not really going to change much? Let me know all of that and more down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one.